Ever stop to think about how one single day on the calendar can hold so much history? Just 24 hours can witness revolutions, the birth of legends, and moments that completely change the direction of a country. Well, today, we're going to zoom in on one of those days. So let's just jump right in with a question. What on earth could possibly connect a huge victory for civil rights, the creation of one of the most famous superheroes ever, and a moment where a US president's life was on the line? I mean, it sounds like a trick question, right? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, but it's also kind of profound. They all happened on the exact same day, March 30th. It's like this one date is a major crossroads in the American story, and we're about to explore why, starting with a giant leap for liberty. All right, so for our first story, let's head way back to the 19th century. It was a time of massive change in the US, and a single document was about to reshape the very meaning of American democracy. On March 30th, 1870, the 15th Amendment officially became part of the U.S. Constitution. And here's the really crucial part. It basically wrote into the highest law of the land that you couldn't stop someone from voting just because of their race or because they had been enslaved before. This was an absolutely monumental step in the long, hard fight for equality. And get this wasn't some law that took forever to make a difference. The impact was immediate. Like literally the next day, on March 31st, a man named Thomas Peterson Mundy became the very first African-American to vote under this new amendment. And then later that same year, Hiram Rhodes Revels became the first African-American to serve in the U.S. Congress. So this wasn't just paper, it was real change, happening right away. Okay, now, let's do a complete 180. We're going to jump forward about 70 years, leaving the halls of government and heading to the newsstands of America for the birth of a very different kind of hero. Yep, on this very same day, March 30th, but in 1939, a new comic book hit the stands. It was Detective Comics number 27, and buried inside, in this little 6-page story by creators Bob Kane and Bill Finger, was the first ever appearance of a brand new character, the Batman, and his alter ego, the millionaire Bruce Wayne. So what was the price tag for this piece of pop culture history? You ready for this? Just 10 cents. A single dime. That's all it cost to witness the beginning of a legend that would spawn decades of movies, shows, you name it. But keep that number in your head, because fast forward to today, and a copy of that same 10-cent comic, it's sold at auction for, wait for it, over $1.8 million. It just shows you the incredible lasting power of what started on that March 30th back in 1939. Not a bad return on investment, huh? Okay, so from a hero on a page to a real-life crisis. We're now jumping to March 30th, 1981, a day filled with tension and drama that unfolded right there on live TV, threatening the life of the President of the United States. So here's what happened. Outside a hotel in Washington, D.C., a man named John Hinckley Jr. fired 6 shots at President Ronald Reagan and his team. In the chaos, the president, his press secretary James Brady, a Secret Service agent, and a police officer were all hit. Now, even with a collapsed lung, which is incredibly serious, the 70-year-old Reagan actually walked into the hospital on his own 2 feet, and he somehow kept his sense of humor, famously telling his wife Nancy, "Honey, I forgot to duck." It's a line that really came to define his resilience. So why are we still talking about this today? Well, because the shooting had this huge, lasting impact on the law. The terrible injuries to Press Secretary James Brady especially sparked a movement that eventually led to what we now call the Brady Bill. And that bill created the federal background check system for people buying guns, a system that's still in place. Okay, for our last little bit here, we've got a couple more major beginnings that happened on this incredible day. 2 stories about small transactions that grew into something absolutely massive. Way back on March 30th, 1867, the U.S. signed a deal with Russia to buy the territory of Alaska. The price tag? $7 million. Now back then, for a huge chunk of ice and snow, people thought that was an insane amount of money. Yeah, nobody was holding back. The press, the public, they all mocked it. They called it Seward's Folly and Seward's Icebox. Everyone was convinced it was just a colossal waste of money on a giant frozen mistake. And that was the thinking, right up until the Klondike Gold Rush kicked off a few decades later. And suddenly, Seward's Folly started to look like one of the smartest land deals in the history of, well, ever. It proved to be worth way, way more than anyone could have imagined. And speaking of tiny seeds that grew into giant empires, on March 30th, 1971, a totally different kind of American business got its start. The very first Starbucks opened its doors in Seattle, kicking off what would become a daily ritual for millions around the globe. So when you just take a step back and look at it all, it's just wild, isn't it? On one single day across history, you've got this pivotal moment for civil rights, the birth of a cultural icon, a nation on edge during an assassination attempt, a land deal that went from joke to jackpot, and the start of a coffee giant. All these different stories, political, cultural, economic, all just tangled up in one single day on the calendar. It really makes you think about how rich and complicated any given day can be. So from the fight for the right to vote to the dark streets of Gotham City, which piece of March 30th's history do you find the most amazing?